On Mother's Day morning, I opened a gift from my daughter and found a live snake inside. Within minutes, the police were standing in my kitchen, my husband staring at the box in disbelief. If you think you know what betrayal feels like, wait until your own child sends fear straight to your doorstep. Before I tell you exactly what happened, and how one Mother's Day changed everything, I'd love to know, have you ever had a moment when family crossed a line you thought was unbreakable? Leave your story in the comments and subscribe if you believe every mother deserves respect. You won't want to miss how this ends. Let me take you back to where it all started, before the police, before the panic. The morning air was gentle, sunlight streaming through lace curtains, and the scent of cinnamon lingered in the kitchen. My husband, Robert, bustled around, humming as he prepared breakfast. I watched him, quietly grateful for his steady presence, especially now that the house felt so much emptier. Since Lauren, our only daughter, married Ethan last year and moved out, our home was more silent than I'd ever imagined. I was just pouring my first cup of coffee when a sharp knock broke the calm. A delivery van sat outside. The driver handed me a box, wrapped in lavender paper with a gold bow, and a handwritten card. "Happy Mother's Day, ma'am," she said, her tone cheerful. But something about the way she looked at me lingered, almost as if she knew the contents weren't meant for celebration. I carried the package to the kitchen, turning it over in my hands. Lauren's handwriting danced across the card. "To Mom, a surprise for you. Love, Lauren." My breath caught. Lauren hadn't sent flowers or even called much since the wedding. Lately, her texts were cold, always hurried, as if speaking to me was a chore she'd outgrown. Robert came in, arms full of groceries. He set them down and grinned. Looks like Lauren remembered after all. His optimism tugged at my heart, but I couldn't match his smile. "Open it," he urged gently. I tugged at the ribbon, my fingers trembling. Something in my chest, instinct or dread, made me hesitate. I told myself not to be ridiculous. Surely, Lauren wouldn't send anything cruel. She was still my little girl, somewhere under the distance and the new last name. Inside the wrapping was a plain white box. Underneath the lid, tissue paper rustled. On top, a note, "Please open together. I hope this helps us reconnect. Love, Lauren." Robert leaned closer, searching my face for reassurance. I lifted out a smaller box tucked inside the first one, oddly heavy, covered in packing tape, and punctured with tiny holes. My nerves flared. "Evelyn, let's wait," Robert whispered, but pride and longing pushed me forward. The tape gave way. I peeled back the lid. Instantly, a cold, slithering movement inside, the unmistakable sound of scales on cardboard. I froze. Robert's eyes widened, his hand gripping my arm. Something alive. Something moving. My phone buzzed, a text from Lauren. "Surprise. Don't freak out. I love you." My skin prickled. I inched the lid open farther. The flash of scales, a hiss, the unmistakable coil of a snake inside. My heart hammered. The room spun. I stumbled back, Robert catching me before I hit the floor. He slammed the lid closed, breathing hard. "That's it. We're calling the police." As he dialed, my mind reeled. A Mother's Day gift from my own daughter, delivered with a threat, a joke, or maybe a warning. Was this punishment? A test? A twisted cry for help? I stood trembling as the operator instructed us to keep our distance and wait for officers to arrive. My reflection in the kitchen window looked hollow, older. This was supposed to be a day for gratitude and warmth, but all I felt was cold confusion, disappointment, fear, and a sorrow so deep it made my hands shake. Robert tried to comfort me, but I could see worry etched in the lines around his mouth. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding," he said. But even as he spoke, we both knew that this moment, this box, meant something in our family had gone terribly wrong. Mother's Day had never felt so far from love. The police arrived in under 10 minutes, but each second felt like an hour. Robert ushered them in, his hands still shaking as he pointed to the box on the kitchen table. Two officers, one older, one barely out of academy, swept into the room, radio static crackling on their shoulders, boots dampening the morning's peace. The older officer spoke first, his voice gentle, as if he'd seen this kind of chaos hidden behind the doors of too many quiet homes. "Ma'am, can you tell us what's happened here?" I opened my mouth but no words came. Robert stepped in. "We received a package, Mother's Day gift, from our daughter. When my wife opened it, there was a live snake inside. We haven't touched it since." The younger officer, her eyes alert but kind, moved closer to the box, inspecting the holes in the lid and the thick, hastily torn tape. She glanced at me, perhaps searching for some explanation, some thread that might tie sense to madness. I only managed a weak shake of my head. Animal control was called, and in the lull while we waited, I sat at the edge of the sofa, arms wrapped tight around my middle. Robert stayed close, his hand warm on my shoulder, both of us watching the officers as they moved through our home, making it feel unfamiliar, like we were guests in our own lives. I tried to collect myself, replaying Lauren's text over and over. "Don't freak out. I love you." The words stung. Was this love, some new warped version I couldn't recognize? Or had something deeper, uglier rooted itself in my daughter's heart? The last real conversation Lauren and I had was months ago, on her birthday. I'd called, eager, hoping to bridge whatever distance kept growing between us. She sounded distracted, impatient. When I asked if she and Ethan would come for dinner, she made excuses: work, exhaustion, maybe another time, Mom. That, maybe, had become our only promise. The officers asked gentle questions. Did I feel threatened? Did I want to file a report? Robert answered for both of us: no, no threats, just confusion and fear. I couldn't find my voice, couldn't admit out loud that my own daughter had made me afraid to open a gift. Animal control arrived, an older man with salt and pepper hair and a voice like gravel. He carried a clear plastic carrier, a long hook, and a steady patience. "Let's see what we have here," he said, lifting the box and opening it just enough to coax the snake into his bag. His movements were sure, practiced. Within minutes, the animal was contained. He nodded at me, reassuring. "It's just a corn snake. Not dangerous. Someone went to trouble to ship it safely. Probably not meant to harm." His words were meant to soothe, but they burned. If Lauren didn't mean harm, what did she mean? What mother receives a live snake from her daughter and is told it's probably just a prank? As the professionals filed out, promising reports and follow-up calls, the house emptied again. The kitchen looked untouched, except for the bare spot where the box had sat, and the tension still pressing the air flat. Robert led me back to the sofa, pulling me into a side embrace. "Do you want to call Lauren?" he asked, softly, like he was asking if I needed air. I didn't know what I wanted. I only knew what I felt, the ache of years spent loving a child who seemed to slip further away with every sacrifice I made. I remembered all the little moments, her laughter echoing down the hallway, sticky fingers pressed into my palm, the fierce loyalty she once had for me, for us. Where had that gone? Was it lost to time, to Ethan, to some need I could never fill? Still, I had to know. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and called Lauren. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright, almost brittle. "Hey, Mom. Did you get my present?" My mouth was dry. "I did." "Lauren, why?" She giggled, a sound that used to light up a room but now only made me feel colder. "Don't be mad. Ethan thought it would be funny. He said you always like surprises." A laugh, then a pause. "You're not mad, are you?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. Another part of me, older, tired, simply wanted to understand. Lauren, it frightened me. It didn't feel like a joke. She sighed. Mom, I'm sorry. Ethan's been under a lot of pressure. I thought, if we did something fun, maybe it'd help break the ice. Break the ice. As if sending a snake was an olive branch. As if fear could be the foundation for healing. My chest tightened. Robert listened quietly, his jaw set. I felt his anger pulsing just beneath the surface, but he let me speak. I tried to steady my voice. Is everything okay? Between you and Ethan? There was a long silence. In the background, I heard Ethan's voice, something sharp, muffled, impatient. Lauren's tone changed. We're fine. Things have been a little tight. Work's been slow. Ethan lost his job last month. We just need a little help, Mom. Nothing big. Maybe just some help with rent, a few bills. There it was. The ask, the reason, hiding inside a box of scales and fangs. I closed my eyes. I had lost count of how many times Lauren needed just a little help. I wanted to help. I wanted to say yes, to save her, as I always had. But I remembered all the times, just this once, became a pattern, a cycle. The lines between love and enabling had blurred so long ago, I wasn't sure they'd ever been real. I spoke slowly, each word heavy. Lauren, we'll talk about it. But this, what you did today, it hurt. She was quiet. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. We just didn't know how else to ask. The call ended with a strained goodbye. I sat, staring at the silent phone, the ache in my chest growing, expanding until it filled every space the snake had left behind. Robert squeezed my hand. His eyes were sad. We can't keep doing this, he whispered. I knew he was right. But what do you do when your only child keeps crossing lines, when every act of love becomes a new place for pain to bloom? I didn't have the answer. I only had the question, ringing in my mind as the sun rose higher and the rest of Mother's Day slipped quietly away. The rest of Mother's Day passed in a strange, muted haze. The house felt heavier than it ever had before, each familiar room somehow different, each quiet moment stretched out by something I didn't have words for. Robert and I ate a silent lunch, pushing food around our plates, pretending not to notice how our appetites had vanished with the snake. Outside, the world moved on. Neighborhood kids played basketball in the street, their shouts bright with the uncomplicated joy of people who still trusted their families. I watched them from the kitchen window, one hand pressed against the glass, feeling more like a spectator in my own life than a participant. After a while, Robert suggested we go for a walk. The air outside was cool and smelled of lilacs. We strolled past tidy lawns and newly bloomed gardens, our hands brushing now and then, both of us lost in separate streams of thought. Robert didn't say much, but I saw the worry etched in the corners of his mouth, the same lines I'd watched deepen each year as Lauren pulled further away. We ended up at the little park near our old elementary school. The benches were empty, swings creaking gently in the wind. We sat, side by side, and for a long time neither of us spoke. Finally, Robert broke the silence. When did it get so hard, Evie? I thought about it. Was it the day Lauren started high school and suddenly found my rules stifling? Was it college, when she called home less and less, always busy, always tired? Or was it the moment she met Ethan, a charming smile hiding a restless, dissatisfied spirit, and seemed to vanish into a new life overnight? I don't know, I admitted. But I keep thinking, if I had done something different, if I had loved her in some other way, would she still be here, or would she still have sent that box? Robert reached over and squeezed my hand. You were a wonderful mother. You still are. Whatever's broken, it's not just on you. His reassurance was gentle, but I couldn't shake the guilt. I'd built my whole life around Lauren, her comfort, her happiness, her future. And now, in the quiet spaces left by her absence, I was left only with questions. We walked home as the sun slipped lower in the sky. Back in the kitchen, I found myself opening the junk drawer, searching for something I couldn't name, running my fingers over old photographs and expired coupons. There, tucked in a pile of mail, I found another envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in Lauren's hurried handwriting. A fresh wave of anxiety washed over me. I sat down and opened it, heart pounding. Inside was a letter. Mom. I'm sorry about earlier. Ethan says I shouldn't have sent the snake, but I thought you'd laugh. I just wanted to get your attention, to make you see how stressed we are. Things are bad here. We're behind on rent. Ethan's out of work, and the bills are piling up. I know you and Dad helped before, but this is different. I'm scared. I don't want to lose our apartment. I don't want to lose you. Please, Mom. Can you help us one more time? Love. Lauren. I stared at the words, reading them again and again, searching for the Lauren I remembered. My little girl who used to write me birthday poems, who cried when she lost her first tooth, who hugged me so hard after her high school graduation I thought my ribs might crack. But all I found was desperation, raw and pleading. The snake hadn't been a joke at all, it was a message, a cry for help twisted by shame and pride and all the tangled emotions that had grown between us. Robert came into the kitchen and found me staring at the letter, tears tracking silently down my face. He read it over my shoulder, then put his arm around me. We can't solve this for her, he said quietly. I know. My voice broke. But how do I let her suffer? She's still our daughter. Robert sighed. Evie, we've bailed them out so many times. Every time, they promise it's the last. Every time, it's not. What will be different now? I didn't have an answer. The ache in my chest was a familiar old wound, reopened and raw. I wanted to call Lauren, to tell her it would be okay, that I'd send the money, that I'd always be here no matter what. But I also knew the truth. Every time we rescued her, we only taught her that she didn't have to save herself. I went upstairs and sat on Lauren's old bed, the faded quilt still patterned with flowers she'd chosen at 10 years old. The walls were covered in old photographs and dried-out concert tickets, reminders of a girl who once dreamed out loud and believed her mother could fix anything. I held the letter in my lap, my fingers trembling. A memory drifted up, Lauren at 5, running home after skinning her knee, sobbing until I scooped her into my arms. I'd cleaned her wound, pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispered that everything would be all right. Back then, love was simple. A band-aid, a hug, a promise. Now, love felt like something sharper, more complicated, a choice between pain and a different kind of pain. That night, Robert and I sat together on the porch, watching the sky fade from blue to violet to black. He took my hand in his, and for a while, we just listened to the crickets and the distant sound of a neighbor's radio. I leaned my head on his shoulder and tried to imagine a future where Lauren found her way back to us. A future where Mother's Day wasn't marked by fear or sorrow, but by forgiveness and real connection. But the letter was still in my pocket, heavy as a stone. And I knew that tomorrow, we'd have to decide, again, where to draw the line between helping and hurting, between love and letting go. As I went to bed, I lay awake, replaying every word Lauren had written, every word I hadn't said. In the darkness, I wondered if being a mother meant always questioning, always hoping, always aching in the spaces where your child used to be. I wondered if Lauren had any idea how much power she still held over my heart, even now, even after the snake, even after all the years of growing apart. The truth was, I would always love her. But I was beginning to realize that loving someone didn't mean losing yourself to their chaos. It didn't mean accepting pain as the price of connection. Maybe, tomorrow, I would be brave enough to tell her that. The rest of Mother's Day passed in a strange, muted haze. The house felt heavier than it ever had before, each familiar room somehow different, each quiet moment stretched out by something I didn't have words for. Robert and I ate a silent lunch, pushing food around our plates, pretending not to notice how our appetites had vanished with the snake. Outside, the world moved on. Neighborhood kids played basketball in the street, their shouts bright with the uncomplicated joy of people who still trusted their families. I watched them from the kitchen window, one hand pressed against the glass, feeling more like a spectator in my own life than a participant. After a while, Robert suggested we go for a walk. The air outside was cool and smelled of lilacs. We strolled past tidy lawns and newly bloomed gardens, our hands brushing now and then, both of us lost in separate streams of thought. Robert didn't say much, but I saw the worry etched in the corners of his mouth, the same lines I'd watched deepen each year as Lauren pulled further away. We ended up at the little park near our old elementary school. The benches were empty, swings creaking gently in the wind. We sat, side by side, and for a long time neither of us spoke. Finally, Robert broke the silence. "When did it get so hard, Evie?" I thought about it. Was it the day Lauren started high school and suddenly found my rules stifling? Was it college, when she called home less and less, always busy, always tired? Or was it the moment she met Ethan, a charming smile hiding a restless, dissatisfied spirit, and seemed to vanish into a new life overnight? I don't know, I admitted. But I keep thinking, if I had done something different, if I had loved her in some other way, would she still be here, or would she still have sent that box? Robert reached over and squeezed my hand. "You were a wonderful mother. You still are. Whatever's broken, it's not just on you." His reassurance was gentle, but I couldn't shake the guilt. I'd built my whole life around Lauren, her comfort, her happiness, her future. And now, in the quiet spaces left by her absence, I was left only with questions. We walked home as the sun slipped lower in the sky. Back in the kitchen, I found myself opening the junk drawer, searching for something I couldn't name, running my fingers over old photographs and expired coupons. There, tucked in a pile of mail, I found another envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in Lauren's hurried handwriting. A fresh wave of anxiety washed over me. I sat down and opened it, heart pounding. Inside was a letter. "Mom. I'm sorry about earlier. Ethan says I shouldn't have sent the snake, but I thought you'd laugh. I just wanted to get your attention, to make you see how stressed we are. Things are bad here. We're behind on rent. Ethan's out of work, and the bills are piling up. I know you and Dad helped before, but this is different. I'm scared. I don't want to lose our apartment. I don't want to lose you. Please, Mom. Can you help us one more time? Love. Lauren." I stared at the words, reading them again and again, searching for the Lauren I remembered, my little girl who used to write me birthday poems, who cried when she lost her first tooth, who hugged me so hard after her high school graduation I thought my ribs might crack. But all I found was desperation, raw and pleading. The snake hadn't been a joke at all, it was a message, a cry for help twisted by shame and pride and all the tangled emotions that had grown between us. Robert came into the kitchen and found me staring at the letter, tears tracking silently down my face. He read it over my shoulder, then put his arm around me. "We can't solve this for her," he said quietly. "I know." My voice broke. "But how do I let her suffer? She's still our daughter." Robert sighed. "Evie, we've bailed them out so many times. Every time, they promise it's the last. Every time, it's not. What will be different now?" I didn't have an answer. The ache in my chest was a familiar old wound, reopened and raw. I wanted to call Lauren, to tell her it would be okay, that I'd send the money, that I'd always be here no matter what. But I also knew the truth, every time we rescued her, we only taught her that she didn't have to save herself. I went upstairs and sat on Lauren's old bed, the faded quilt still patterned with flowers she'd chosen at 10 years old. The walls were covered in old photographs and dried-out concert tickets, reminders of a girl who once dreamed out loud and believed her mother could fix anything. I held the letter in my lap, my fingers trembling. A memory drifted up, Lauren at 5, running home after skinning her knee, sobbing until I scooped her into my arms. I'd cleaned her wound, pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispered that everything would be all right. Back then, love was simple, a band-aid, a hug, a promise. Now, love felt like something sharper, more complicated, a choice between pain and a different kind of pain. That night, Robert and I sat together on the porch, watching the sky fade from blue to violet to black. He took my hand in his, and for a while, we just listened to the crickets and the distant sound of a neighbor's radio. I leaned my head on his shoulder and tried to imagine a future where Lauren found her way back to us, a future where Mother's Day wasn't marked by fear or sorrow, but by forgiveness and real connection. But the letter was still in my pocket, heavy as a stone. And I knew that tomorrow, we'd have to decide, again, where to draw the line between helping and hurting, between love and letting go. As I went to bed, I lay awake, replaying every word Lauren had written, every word I hadn't said. In the darkness, I wondered if being a mother meant always questioning, always hoping, always aching in the spaces where your child used to be. I wondered if Lauren had any idea how much power she still held over my heart, even now, even after the snake, even after all the years of growing apart. The truth was, I would always love her. But I was beginning to realize that loving someone didn't mean losing yourself to their chaos. It didn't mean accepting pain as the price of connection. Maybe, tomorrow, I would be brave enough to tell her that. Morning light crept slowly across the ceiling as I lay awake, staring at the shadowed patterns and listening to Robert's steady breathing beside me. I'd barely slept, my mind turning over Lauren's letter again and again, searching for some answer that never came. Outside, a lawn mower started up, the neighbor's dog barked at a squirrel, and the world kept on as if nothing inside my house had changed. But everything had. I dressed quietly and padded down the hallway, the floorboards creaking in a familiar rhythm. I paused outside Lauren's old room, the door slightly ajar. The letter lay on her pillow where I'd left it last night, a silent accusation in her looping script. For a moment, I almost felt her presence, a ghost of childhood laughter, the faint scent of her favorite strawberry shampoo. I forced myself to turn away. There was no comfort to be found in memories this morning. Robert was already in the kitchen, nursing a mug of coffee and reading the news on his tablet. He looked up, offering a tired smile. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not really." I poured myself coffee, letting the warmth anchor me. "I kept thinking about what to do." He nodded. "Me too. I called the bank this morning. We have enough in savings, but," he trailed off, and I knew what he meant. We'd dipped into our retirement before, for Lauren's debts, Ethan's lost jobs, medical bills that never seemed to end. Each time, we promised it would be the last. Each time, it wasn't. "We can't just keep emptying ourselves for them," Robert said softly, not unkindly. "We have to draw the line somewhere." The words stung, but I knew he was right. The problem was, the lines I drew always blurred when I thought of Lauren in pain. The phone rang, slicing through my thoughts. Lauren's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Mom?" Her voice was raw, fragile. "Did you get my letter?" "Yes, sweetheart. I got it." There was a pause. I heard Ethan in the background, his voice tight with irritation. Lauren's tone shifted, trying for brightness. "I know things got weird yesterday. I panicked. I shouldn't have sent the snake. I'm sorry." I closed my eyes, picturing her as a child, rushing into my arms for forgiveness over the smallest things. This apology felt heavier, weighted by years of distance and disappointment. I accept your apology, Lauren. But you can't do things like that. It scared me. It scared your father. She sniffled, and for a moment I heard the daughter I used to know. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to ask for help anymore. It feels like you and Dad have given up on us. Robert met my eyes across the kitchen, his expression caught between anger and heartache. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. Lauren, we haven't given up. But we're worried about you. About Ethan. About the choices you keep making. Her voice went small. We're trying, Mom. We really are. But it's hard. Sometimes it feels like the world's against us. I wanted to reach through the phone and hold her, to banish the bitterness I heard behind her words. But I also knew the dangers of false hope. Each rescue seemed to push her further away from the person she'd been, the person she could be again. Lauren, we love you. We always will. But we can't keep saving you every time something goes wrong. You have to learn to stand on your own feet. We want to help, but not if it means losing ourselves. I heard Ethan mutter something in the background. Lauren's reply was muffled, but sharp. The old shame flared in me. Was I driving her further away? Was this the moment she'd decide I was no longer worth having as a mother? But then Lauren surprised me. I know, Mom. I get it. I feel so lost. Sometimes I don't know what else to do but ask you. It's like I'm drowning. Something inside me cracked, just a little. The urge to rush in, to throw her a lifeline, almost overpowered me. But I remembered the empty savings account, the sleepless nights, the feeling of always waiting for the next crisis. I remembered Robert's voice, gentle but firm. We can't keep emptying ourselves. Lauren, I said quietly, you're not alone. But you and Ethan have to take responsibility for your lives. Maybe talk to a counselor. Find work, even if it isn't what you want. Ask for help, but not just from us. From yourselves. From each other. She was silent for a long time. I thought she'd hung up, but finally, her voice came back, softer. Okay, Mom. I'll try. I promise. The call ended. I set the phone down and leaned against the counter, exhausted by the effort of holding my boundaries. Robert stood and wrapped his arms around me. You did the right thing. I wanted to believe him. That afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mail. Legal-sized, thick, addressed to both Robert and me in formal block letters. I frowned, opening it with a sense of foreboding. Inside were documents from Ethan's parents' lawyer, cold, official language outlining unpaid loans, references to money we'd promised Lauren and Ethan after their wedding, and an implicit threat of legal action should we not pay the outstanding support. I stared at the words, rage and disbelief flooding me. I handed the papers to Robert, who read them in silence, his face growing harder with every line. They're trying to bully us, he said finally, voice clipped. Trying to scare us into paying. My hands shook. Did Lauren know about this? We called her again, the phone on speaker. Lauren answered, her voice wary. Lauren, we just got a letter from Ethan's parents' attorney. What is going on? She sounded genuinely shocked. I didn't know. Ethan said his parents might help us, but I had no idea they'd contact you. I believed her, or wanted to. But a small doubt festered, old and sharp. Robert spoke up, his tone calm but steely. Lauren, this isn't the way. You have to find another solution. We can't, no, we won't, be intimidated. If you want a relationship with us, it has to be built on honesty, not threats. Lauren started to cry, real tears now, her composure finally cracking. I'm so sorry, Mom. Dad. I didn't want it to go this far. I feel like everything is falling apart. I softened, feeling that old ache return. Lauren, you're stronger than you think. You can get through this. But you and Ethan have to do it together. We ended the call gently, but the feeling of violation lingered. That night, Robert and I sat at the kitchen table, the lawyer's letter between us like a loaded gun. This has to end, Robert said quietly. I nodded, resolve hardening in me. We can't save her from herself. Not anymore. And as the house settled into uneasy silence, I knew that the next step would change our family forever. For the next few days, the house felt both emptier and lighter, as if some invisible weight had finally been shifted, but the shadow of Lauren's pain remained in every corner. I tried to focus on small routines, tidying up the garden, watering the pots Lauren once filled with marigolds and petunias, letting the rhythm of ordinary tasks anchor me against the surge and crash of memory. Robert threw himself into home repairs he'd been putting off for months, oiling door hinges, cleaning gutters, repainting the front porch rail. I could tell that keeping his hands busy was his way of keeping the ache at bay. In the evenings, we sat side by side, reading in silence or watching old movies, reaching for each other's hands during the quietest moments, both grateful and afraid of how much quieter our world had become. But I couldn't let go of Lauren, not fully. Each morning, I found myself glancing at my phone, hoping for a message, anything to prove that the door between us hadn't closed forever. Sometimes, I would catch myself dialing her number and then stopping, afraid to push her further away by reaching out too soon. It was on the third evening, just as twilight settled over the neighborhood, that a text arrived. Lauren, Mom, can we talk? Just us? I really need you. A part of me leapt up in hope, another part braced for disappointment. I stepped outside onto the porch to call her, the air cool and sweet with the scent of cut grass. She answered almost immediately. Her voice was hushed, as if she were hiding in another room. Hi, Mom. I tried to sound calm. Hi, sweetheart. I'm glad you reached out. She hesitated, then spoke so softly I had to strain to hear. I'm at a motel. I left Ethan. For a second, I could only listen to my own breathing, the sound of cars passing on the street, a neighbor calling her dog. What happened? I asked gently. Her voice broke. He lost his temper last night. Started yelling, throwing things. I got scared. I grabbed my bag and left. I felt a cold wave pass through me, anger and fear rising at once. Are you safe now? Did he hurt you? No, she whispered, but I wasn't sure if she meant it for me or herself. I couldn't take it anymore. All the pressure, the bills, the fighting. He kept blaming me for everything going wrong. I thought if I stayed, maybe it would get better, but, she stopped, voice cracking. I'm sorry for everything. For the snake, the money, all of it. I was so desperate, Mom. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized how deep her pain must have been, hidden beneath so many layers of pride and anger. You don't have to be sorry for needing help, I said, my voice shaking. But you do have to be honest with yourself, and with me. We can get through this, but only if you let me in. For the first time in years, Lauren let herself cry. Not the angry, manipulative tears I'd come to fear, but the raw, vulnerable sobs of a child who finally admits they are lost. I listened, my heart torn between sorrow and relief, wishing I could reach across the miles to hold her, to promise that this time things really could be different. When she calmed, I asked, what do you need from me right now? She took a shaky breath. I just needed to hear your voice. To know you didn't hate me. I don't have much money left, but I'll figure something out. I needed to know I could still call you. You can always call me, I whispered. Always. We spoke for a while longer, planning what she would do next, finding a new place to stay, reaching out to a counselor, maybe looking for a job on her own terms for the first time. She didn't ask for money. I didn't offer, not right away. This time, I wanted to be there as a mother, not as a savior. When we finally hung up, the sky had turned deep blue, the first stars blinking overhead. Robert came out onto the porch, concern etched across his brow. "Is she all right?" he asked. "She left him," I replied. "She's scared. She's alone." He nodded, rubbing my back. "She'll be okay. She's stronger than she thinks. And you're stronger than you believe, too." That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after Robert had gone to bed, the house silent but for the ticking of the old clock. I thought about all the times I'd rescued Lauren, all the ways I'd confused love with rescue, all the ways I'd lost parts of myself in the name of helping her. Now, for the first time, I realized there was another kind of love, one that stood close by but did not carry the weight for her. One that offered arms to rest in, but not always a net to fall into. In the quiet, I made a silent promise, would not turn my back on Lauren. But I would not lose myself to her chaos either. I would be her mother, steady and loving, but I would also be whole, a woman who had her own needs, her own boundaries, her own life. The next morning, Lauren texted again. She'd made an appointment with a counselor, had found a small job at a nearby bakery, and was looking for a room to rent. Her messages were short but hopeful, the desperation gone, replaced by the flicker of something new, determination. I sent her a reply, simple but full of love. "I'm proud of you. Let me know if you need anything that isn't money. I believe in you." And for the first time since Mother's Day, I felt a lightness in my chest, a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, both Lauren and I could find our way back to each other, not as rescuer and victim, but as two women learning how to be strong, together and apart. Lauren kept her promise, at least in the first fragile days after she left Ethan. Her texts came every morning, updates about her job at the bakery, the tiny studio she found above an antique shop, even the counselor she'd finally agreed to meet. Each message was short but sincere, carrying a tone I hadn't heard from her in years, humility, and a hint of hope. I read and reread her words, letting the small victories slowly mend the wounds left by years of chaos. Robert watched all this unfold with quiet optimism. "She's finding her feet," he said one evening, pouring me a glass of wine as we sat on the back porch. "You can hear it in her voice, Evie. You should be proud." I wanted to be. I was proud, in ways that surprised me. But pride and relief mingled with a deeper, more complicated grief, a letting go of the fantasy that I could protect Lauren from every mistake, that my love could insulate her from pain or failure. Instead, I learned to stand a little apart, to offer support when asked, to trust that she would call if she truly needed me. A week after Lauren left Ethan, she called me late at night. Her voice was tired but calm, her words measured, almost careful. "Mom, I'm sorry it took so long for me to see things for what they were. I think I kept hoping things would fix themselves if I just tried hard enough. But I can see now how much I hurt you and Dad. I want to make it right. I just don't know how." Her honesty caught me off guard. I set aside the book I'd been pretending to read and listened to the space between her sentences, the tremble of fear, the longing for forgiveness. "Lauren," I said quietly, "you don't have to make it right all at once. Healing takes time, and so does trust. What matters is that you're trying. I love you. That's never changed." She cried softly, not with desperation but with relief. "I love you too, Mom. I really do. I need to figure out who I am, without all the noise. Without relying on you and Dad for every safety net." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "That's all we've ever wanted for you. To see you stand on your own, to know that you're strong enough to build a life you can be proud of. And I'm always here, when you need someone to talk to. Not to fix things, but to listen. There was a long pause, then she laughed, a light, genuine sound that warmed me to my core. You know what the counselor said? She said I've spent so long running from my own mistakes that I forgot how to stand still and look at them. She said the hardest part is facing yourself, not your parents, not your spouse. Just yourself. I smiled, feeling a measure of peace settle in me. She sounds like a wise woman. Lauren laughed again, and for a moment I heard echoes of her younger self, the girl who used to twirl in the kitchen, singing to the radio, before the world and its expectations grew heavy on her shoulders. We talked until midnight, sharing stories, memories, even a few regrets. I told her how hard it had been for me to let go, to realize that loving her sometimes meant saying no, even when it broke my heart. She listened without defensiveness, and when she spoke, it was with a vulnerability I hadn't heard since she was a child. I used to think asking for help made me weak, she admitted. But I see now that it's okay to need people, just not to use them. I think I was so afraid of failing that I tried to control everything, and when I couldn't, I panicked. I'm sorry for turning that panic on you and Dad. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was real. The kind of conversation I'd prayed for, years ago, when all we could manage were fights and tears and silent treatments. For the first time, I saw Lauren as a woman wrestling honestly with her own story, not just as my daughter but as a person struggling to grow. The next day, she sent me a photo, her hands covered in flour, a lopsided loaf of bread resting on the counter behind her. First solo batch at the bakery, she wrote. It's ugly, but it's mine. I smiled, my heart aching with pride and a sweet sadness. I forwarded the picture to Robert, who sent back a row of celebratory emojis and the words, "She's finding her way, Evie. So are we." That weekend, Lauren invited us to visit her new place. I hesitated, afraid to crowd her independence, but she insisted. "Please, Mom. I want you to see where I am now." Robert and I drove across town, the car quiet with anticipation. Lauren's studio was small but bright, windows spilling sunlight across the battered wood floor. She'd hung thrift store curtains, arranged second-hand books in stacks along the wall, and taped Polaroids of her favorite bakery treats on the fridge. It was modest, even a little shabby, but it radiated a warmth and care I hadn't felt from Lauren in years. She hugged me at the door, fiercely, as if making up for all the times she'd pushed me away. Robert and Lauren exchanged an awkward but loving smile, and for a moment, the three of us just stood there, taking in the strangeness and the beauty of starting over. We ate lunch at a tiny cafe down the street, Lauren chattering about her coworkers, her counselor, the customers who tipped her with fresh strawberries or poetry. She didn't ask for money, and when the check came, she paid her share with quiet pride. Afterward, she walked us back to our car. The sun was warm, and the city felt new in a way I hadn't expected. Lauren hugged us both again, then stepped back, hands shoved into her jacket pockets, a shy smile on her lips. "Thank you," she said, voice thick with emotion. "For not giving up on me. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it." Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I squeezed her hand, grateful for the strength in her grip, the steadiness in her gaze. "We love you, Lauren. Always." As we drove home, Robert reached over and held my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my skin. "You did it, Evie," he whispered. "You showed her what real love is." I leaned back in the seat, feeling the ache in my chest soften at last. Maybe the road ahead would still be rough. Maybe there would be setbacks, hard days, old wounds that flared up now and then. But for the first time in a long time, I believed we could weather them, together, honest and unafraid. In the weeks that followed our visit to Lauren's studio, life slowly began to resemble something close to peace. The scars left by years of chaos were still there, but they faded a little with each new memory. Simple phone calls about her day, photos of sunrise from her apartment window, a running joke about the burnt bread she sold by accident to a grateful college student. I was careful not to overstep. I checked in, but not too often. I offered advice, but only when asked. There was a new balance between us, one I had longed for, but never quite believed we could achieve. Robert noticed the change too. His laughter returned, less burdened by worry. At night, he would brush a stray lock of hair from my forehead and whisper, "She's coming home to herself, Evie. And so are you." One Saturday morning, Lauren called earlier than usual. Her voice was shaky but determined. "Mom, do you have a minute? There's something I need to tell you." I braced myself. Old fears surfaced. Was she in trouble? Had something fallen apart? But this time, her news was different. "I spoke with Ethan," she said, voice trembling. "He found out where I work and came by yesterday. He wasn't angry, not really. More defeated, I think. He apologized for everything, for the yelling, the blaming, even for letting his parents get involved. He said he never meant for things to get so bad." I listened, every muscle tense. "Did you feel safe?" "Yes," Lauren replied. "I wasn't afraid this time. I told him I need space. That I'm not ready to come back, and I might never be." For once, he listened. I think he finally saw how far things had gone. Relief washed over me, mixed with sadness for the young couple I'd once hoped would find happiness together. "I'm proud of you, Lauren." That took courage. She hesitated. "I'm proud of me too." I never thought I'd say that. For a while, we just sat on the phone together, silent but connected. I heard birds singing outside her window, the soft clatter of the city waking up. She sounded older now, as if the pain had matured her in ways nothing else could. "Mom," she said after a moment, "I need to ask you something, not for money, I promise. But for honesty. Do you ever regret the way you raised me?" The question stunned me. I took a breath, letting the truth fill the silence. "There are things I wish I'd done differently," I admitted. "I wish I'd let you fail more, when you were young. I wish I hadn't stepped in every time you stumbled. I wanted to protect you from pain, but in doing so, maybe I kept you from learning how to stand up after a fall. But I have never, not for a moment, regretted loving you. Not once." Her breath caught. "Thank you, Mom." That's all I needed to hear. Later that week, Lauren surprised me by dropping by unannounced. She stood on the porch, holding a small box tied with twine, her eyes bright with anticipation. I invited her in, nerves fluttering in my stomach. The last time she had arrived with a box, our world had nearly shattered. But this time was different. She handed me the package with a shy smile. "Go on, open it." Inside was a simple necklace, a silver chain with a small charm in the shape of a lily, my favorite flower. A card was tucked beneath the velvet lining. "To Mom, for every time you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I'm still learning, but I'm learning because of you. Love, Lauren." I pressed the necklace to my heart, eyes brimming with tears. "It's beautiful, Lauren." She grinned, a little bashful. "I made it at a craft class at the community center. It's not perfect, but it's perfect to me," I whispered, pulling her into an embrace. We sat together in the kitchen, sharing tea and stories, laughter and silence. She told me about her job, her new friends, the small things that brought her joy, the old man who tipped her with hand-painted rocks, the little girl who brought her a drawing of a dragon eating a cupcake. She spoke about therapy, about learning to forgive herself and let go of the need for approval. I listened, heart full, letting the steady, hopeful rhythm of her words fill the spaces that had long been hollowed by disappointment. At one point, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Do you think Dad would want to go for a walk with me this afternoon? Just the two of us?" The question surprised me, but in the best way. I think he'd love that, Lauren. She smiled, a quiet gratitude in her eyes. I want to make things right with him too. I think I'm finally ready to hear what he has to say, even if it's hard. Robert returned home from the hardware store just as we were finishing lunch. Lauren met him at the door, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, father and daughter, years of words left unsaid hanging between them. Then, softly, Lauren spoke. Dad, would you take a walk with me? I think I owe you an apology. Robert's face softened, the old pain flickering but not flaring. He nodded, and together they headed down the sidewalk, their figures growing smaller as they disappeared around the corner. I watched from the window, a deep calm settling over me. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and for the first time in so many years, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of lasting change. Lauren was finding her strength, and I was finally learning how to let go, not of love, but of the illusion that I could, or should, save her from every storm. When Robert and Lauren returned, both were quiet but lighter, as if a burden had been set down. They joined me on the porch, where we watched the sun sink behind the trees. Lauren squeezed my hand, Robert leaned in close, and for a while, we simply sat together, no apologies left to make, no promises except the ones that come from simply being present, together, unafraid. That night, after Lauren had gone home, I lay in bed with Robert, the silver lily around my neck, my heart full in a way I hadn't known in years. He traced his finger along my hand and whispered, "We did it, Evie. We made it through." I smiled, letting his words settle deep inside me. Maybe this was what it meant to truly love a child, to hold them close, let them go, and welcome them back, over and over, for as long as it takes. Spring slipped quietly into summer, and with each passing day, the house seemed to settle into a new rhythm. Robert and I returned to old habits, weekend trips to the farmer's market, early morning walks through the park, evenings spent on the porch, hands entwined as the sky faded from gold to deep indigo. There were moments when the ache for Lauren's childhood, for the easy laughter of the past, would sneak up on me. But more and more, I found myself anchored in the present, grateful for the peace we'd fought so hard to reclaim. Lauren kept reaching out, but this time the pattern had changed. She didn't call in crisis, didn't ask for money or rescue. Instead, she shared small triumphs, a promotion at the bakery, a new friend from her support group, an art show she'd attended alone for the first time in years. She even sent pictures, a loaf of golden bread she'd baked, her tiny apartment decorated with thrifted lamps and watercolor postcards, her smiling face framed by wild curls I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. One Sunday afternoon, she invited us to her apartment for dinner. I brought a pie, Robert brought fresh herbs from our garden, and together we squeezed around her tiny kitchen table, plates balanced on mismatched chairs. Lauren cooked for us, pasta with roasted vegetables, a salad full of greens and bright cherry tomatoes, bread warm from the oven. She moved with an ease I'd never seen in her, laughing at her own mistakes, teasing Robert when he tried to help and nearly dropped a bowl. The meal was simple but full of joy. Afterward, we lingered over coffee, sharing stories and memories. Lauren talked about her job, her new friends, her therapy. She asked about our days, listened intently, even asked for advice without defensiveness. At one point, she reached for my hand, her grip steady and warm. "I'm sorry for all the times I made you worry, Mom. I can't change the past, but I'm trying to do better now." I squeezed her hand, feeling the strength in her apology. "I see how hard you're working, Lauren. I've never stopped being proud of you." Robert nodded, his eyes shining. "We love you, sweetheart. That's never going to change." Later, after the dishes were done and Lauren sent us home with extra bread, Robert and I walked through the quiet evening streets. The air was heavy with the scent of honeysuckle and cut grass, the world washed in the golden glow of sunset. "She's really growing up, Evie," Robert said softly. I nodded, emotion swelling in my chest. She's becoming the woman we always hoped she'd be, strong, kind, resilient. We didn't need to say more. We both knew the journey it had taken to reach this moment, the mistakes, the heartbreak, the letting go. I wondered how many parents had walked this same road, how many mothers had learned, sometimes painfully, that loving a child meant letting them find their own way, even if it meant watching them stumble. A few days later, Lauren called with news that caught me by surprise. I'd been accepted into a culinary program, she announced, excitement bubbling in her voice. It's just a local community college, but it's a real step towards something I want for myself. I laughed, delighted. That's wonderful, Lauren. I'm so proud of you. She hesitated, then added, it's the first thing I've ever done just for me. No one pushed me into it, no one bailed me out to make it happen. I saved for it. I applied. I did it myself. Her pride shone through the phone. I felt tears prick my eyes, but this time they were happy ones. As the weeks passed, Lauren settled into her new life with a steadiness I'd almost given up hoping for. She kept in touch, sending updates about her classes, her growing circle of friends, the volunteer work she'd started at a local food pantry. She never asked for money, never hinted at needing help. Sometimes, she called just to say goodnight. One evening, as Robert and I sat on the porch watching the fireflies blink across the yard, Lauren arrived unexpectedly. She was breathless, cheeks flushed, a spark in her eyes. I got my first paycheck from the bakery, she announced, waving a small envelope. And I want to take you both out to dinner. My treat. Robert grinned, and I felt laughter bubbling up from somewhere deep and long forgotten. We'd love that, I said, and meant it. At the restaurant, Lauren insisted on paying the bill, proudly handing her card to the waitress. She told stories about work, her culinary classes, the small moments of joy she found in her new independence. She asked us questions about our own dreams, the trips we'd always wanted to take, the things we'd put off for retirement. Promise me you'll go to Italy next year, she said, her eyes bright. You've talked about it for ages. Don't wait. Life's too short. Robert and I exchanged a smile. For the first time, it felt possible, this life after chaos, this hope after heartbreak. After dinner, Lauren hugged us both tightly. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go, she whispered. I never understood what that meant, not really. But I do now. And I hope someday, if I'm ever a mother, I can love like that too. On the way home, I leaned against Robert, heart full. The pain and worry of the past felt distant, like the memory of a storm now that the sun had returned. That night, I found myself sitting in Lauren's old room, the one she'd left behind so many times, each departure another wound. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers along the faded quilt, remembering the girl who once dreamed out loud and believed her mother could fix anything. I closed my eyes and breathed in the peace of the present, grateful for the gift of seeing my daughter not as a child in need of rescue, but as a woman learning, finally, to save herself. Outside, the world moved on, fireflies flashing, a distant dog barking, the gentle hum of summer's promise. Inside, I felt a quiet certainty, we had all survived, and more than that, we had grown. The boundaries I'd once feared would separate us had instead become the foundation for a love that could withstand anything. I rose, switched off the light, and closed the door behind me, not out of sorrow, but with a gentle hope for whatever came next. A year later, the world felt new, greener, gentler, touched by a kind of hope I'd once thought belonged only to other families. Time had softened the sharpest edges of our old pain. It hadn't erased the past, but it had transformed it, teaching me that healing is less a single moment than 1,000 tiny mercies, offered day after day. Lauren had just finished her first semester of culinary school. The three of us gathered on a bright afternoon in our backyard to celebrate, laughter rising over the sound of birdsong and the sizzle of a tiny grill. She wore her school's chef jacket, smudged with flour, pride written across her face in a way no diploma could rival. I can't believe I did it, she said, flipping vegetables with surprising confidence. And I can't believe you both still show up, after everything. Robert winked. There's nothing you could do to make us stop loving you, Lauren. We just had to learn a different way to show it. I reached for Lauren's hand and squeezed it, feeling the strength in her grip. Love changes. That's the hardest part, I think. Letting go of what you imagined it would look like, and learning to see what it really is. She nodded, her eyes shining. I spent so long being afraid you'd give up on me. But you didn't. You let me fall, and you let me get up again. I'm still figuring out how to forgive myself for all the years I blamed you for my mistakes. I brushed a lock of hair from her forehead, remembering all the nights I'd lain awake, wondering if she was safe, if she was warm, if she knew, truly knew, how much she was loved. I made mistakes too. I thought I could protect you from everything. I thought my love was strong enough to carry us both. But I had to learn to trust you, to trust that you would find your own way back. We ate together beneath the shade of the maple tree Lauren had climbed as a child, the same tree she'd fallen from and come running to me for comfort, the same tree I'd watched through long winters, waiting for its branches to bud with spring. The world turned, seasons passed, and somehow we had made it through the hardest parts, not by pretending the pain hadn't happened, but by letting it teach us something true about love, about forgiveness, about the messy beauty of starting over. Later, when Robert went inside to answer a phone call, Lauren and I sat together in the fading sunlight. She handed me a small envelope, her hands shaking slightly. For you, Mom. It's not much, but it's the first thing I ever bought with money I earned all by myself. Inside was a ticket, one way to Florence, Italy, my dream trip, the place Robert and I had always hoped to visit but never quite dared. I looked up, stunned, and Lauren's smile wobbled with pride and a hint of tears. I want you to go, Mom. I want you and Dad to live all the dreams you put on hold for me. You showed me how to keep going, even when it's hard. Now I want you to know what it feels like to choose something just for yourself. Emotion choked me. For so many years, I had given to Lauren until I felt emptied, uncertain if I would ever see her whole and happy. Now, she was giving back, not money, not rescue, but a blessing to live fully, to let my own life blossom in ways I'd once thought had passed me by. I hugged her, holding on tight, both of us laughing through tears. Thank you, Lauren. Not just for this, but for coming back to me. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. I never really left, Mom. I just needed to find my way home. That evening, after Lauren left, Robert and I sat on the porch with the ticket between us, watching the last light slip away. He reached for my hand and held it, silent for a long while. You think she'll be okay? He asked softly. I nodded. She's already more than okay. She's herself. And that's more than I ever dared hope for. He smiled, lines of worry finally softened by peace. I think you're right. And I think it's time we see Florence. We laughed, a sound bright and unburdened, echoing into the dusk. As I prepared for bed, I found myself drawn to the old box of photographs Lauren had left behind. I sat on the floor, flipping through images of her at every age, gap-toothed smiles, ballet recitals, awkward teenage grins, the first day at college, wedding photos filled with hope and uncertainty. I saw it all now for what it was, a journey, not a straight line, but a winding road full of heartbreak and healing, loss and rediscovery. One photo caught my eye, Lauren and me in the garden, her arms flung around my neck, both of us laughing at something lost to memory. I pressed it to my chest, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude for every hard lesson, every painful letting go, every moment of love that had brought us, against all odds, to this new beginning. When I finally crawled into bed, Robert was waiting, his arms open, his embrace warm and steady. For the first time in years, I drifted into sleep with a heart unburdened by worry, carried only by hope for the future and a profound, quiet joy for the present. If you're watching this and your heart aches with the distance between you and someone you love, I want you to know, forgiveness is possible. Growth is messy, but so is life. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is not the act of saving someone, but the courage to let them save themselves. Thank you for listening to our story. If it moved you, please share your own in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hope and healing. And remember, love survives the storm, not because it's perfect, but because it endures.